So here's the pattern laid out, ready to be cut on double folded material. And as you can see, the skirt pieces are a bit too wide. So I have a couple decisions to make. Either I could piece the skirt, or I could just take some of the width out of it because it does get gathered down into the bodice. So if I took, a couple inches out of the width of the skirt, I think it would still be okay. So I think that's what I'm gonna do instead of trying to piece it together. To finish the seams, I ran a zigzag stitch around all the raw edges of my cutout pieces. Next, I assembled the bodice by sewing the shoulder seams and then sewing the side seams up from the bottom and under the armpits and the bottom of the sleeve. Then the skirt panels got the same treatment. So here we have the 4 skirt panels sewn together, and I just want to give you guys a little tour of some couture sewing techniques that I am using for this project, because I recently got a book all about couture sewing techniques, so I'm trying to incorporate some of those techniques into my sewing. This is like the edge of the skirt, and one of the things with couture sewing is that instead of sewing on a separate facing, a lot of the time they are self-faced, so it's actually just the same piece of fabric and then folded over, and that eliminates the bulkiness of having a seam right at the edge there. Additionally, I am hand stitching this down, so it's really hard to see on this fabric. Let's see if I can get the camera to focus. There we go. Yeah, so you can see here are my stitches, and then from the front side of the skirt, you can't even really see it. I mean, it doesn't even look like there is stitching there. Another thing I'm doing is finishing the inside of the seams differently. So I don't have a serger. Serging is definitely not a couture technique, but one of the couture techniques is actually to do like a little whip stitch right along the edge to prevent fraying. Usually, a lot of the times I was accustomed to finishing my seams with a French seam, so that you didn't have any of the raw edges exposed, but that is a lot bulkier and can sort of create like weird tension issues that are visible from the front side of the fabric. So to avoid that, you want to have just your raw edges open, but to prevent fraying, couture sewing does this little whip stitch. Now, I didn't want to do the whip stitch because I didn't want to do quite that much hand sewing for this project. So what I did instead is on my machine, I did this little zigzag stitch, and this does a really good job of preventing fraying, especially because this stitch is one, there in each sort of little section of the zigzag, there are actually 3 stitches. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And having that many little stitches is really good for preventing it from fraying. Another thing I've done, which is not necessarily a couture technique, but that's useful, is whenever I could, I used the selvage edge of the fabric. So you can see here, you can identify the selvage edge because it's got this kind of little fuzzy edge, but that's not ever going to unravel or anything. All of the seams are pressed outwards, so instead of kind of taking both over to one side, as you see a lot in modern sewing, the seams are open outwards, and again, that's done to reduce bulk and to reduce weird pulling on the right side of the fabric. Okay, so the next step is to gather along this line and then along the top edge so that we can sort of gather the skirt down and make it fit around the bodice. To do that, what I'm gonna do is, to make it easy, this line is the same distance away from the top edge the entire time. So I'm just gonna measure this distance here. It's like a little more than 1 1/4. Love my little measuring tool. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come over to my machine, and so that I can sew this correctly, I'm gonna just place a piece of tape right here. So I ran a line of gathering stitches right along that point, keeping the edge of my fabric aligned with the tape. Then I ran another line of gathering stitches right along the top edge. Next, I needed to know where to attach the skirt to on the bodice, so I marked it with pins, trying to follow as much as possible the marking on the pattern piece. Then, so I could remove the pins, I ran a line of basting stitches right along the same point. Next came my absolute least favorite step when dealing with gathered fabric, and that is trying to lay the fabric out with all the gathers evenly distributed. I swear this part always takes ages. So here is the first try on of the dress. It is not yet hemmed, but everything else on it is finished except for like attaching the elastic at the waist here. Initial thoughts are, I don't love it. It is sitting kind of, I mean, it's above my natural waist, but it's not like right at under boob where it's supposed to be. And that's my fault for not doing a full mock-up. Like, I did the mock-up, but I didn't actually put the elastic in, so I was just kind of like guessing on where it was gonna end up. The other thing I don't like is it's not the most flattering. Like, it's really broad through here. The sleeves don't really hang that nicely. Like, I'm not really even loving the sleeves at all. The back is cute. Like, I like how it's raised up a little bit in the back. Okay, I think I've come up with a solution. If I just gather all this, it creates this new like open neckline, which I like how it looks. Probably not at all, you know, accurate to the time period, but I like how this looks a lot better. It raises the waistline just like that little bit. Okay, I have just done a line of stitching and then gathered it up, and you know, it still is not perfect. It still is a little bit, you know, poofy in this area. I think that's just how it's gonna have to be. But overall, I definitely like this side more than I like this side. Okay, I think we have it. Got the little ruches in place. And then I think what I'm gonna do with the sleeves, this is the original sleeve over here, which I hate. Just blech. But this one, if I go from where the slit in the sleeve starts down to the opening, I actually kind of like how that looks. I think I'm gonna pin it to make sure that I really do like it, but because I just have it folded under now. But I think that could be a cute little sleeve. After seam ripping the bottom of the sleeve open, I took each side and folded them in, pinned them, and then cut the excess off before then hem stitching it on the inside. Next, I stitched the elastic down at the waistband. The final steps were to hem the skirt and then attach some pretty lace to the edges of the sleeves and the edge of the bodice.